It is late. You are tired. And without warning, without any invitation, they are back in your head. Someone who hurt you. Someone you have examined from every angle and arrived at the same conclusion about they were not good for you. You know this. You have known it for a long time. And yet there is something in your chest right now that does not care about any of that. Something that misses them anyway. Not the bad parts. Something harder to name than the bad parts. A feeling they gave you that nothing since has quite replicated. And the fact that you still feel it after everything makes you wonder quietly if something is wrong with you. There isn't. But there is something happening beneath the surface that most people never fully understand. And once you do, the missing starts to make a completely different kind of sense. The brain does not file by good or bad. Here's the first thing neuroscience gets right about this, that common sense gets completely wrong. When you remember someone, you are not retrieving an accurate record of who they were. You are retrieving the emotional state they produced in you. The brain is not an archive. It does not store people. It stores feelings. And it tags memories not by what happened, but by how intensely what happened made you feel. This is why you can know every flaw a person had, every lie, every disappointment, every moment they made you feel small, and still feel a pull toward them that defies all of that knowledge. Because what you're feeling when you miss them is not them. It is the neurological signature of the emotional states they created. And the more intense those states were, whether good or bad, the deeper the memory trace. The brain treats emotional intensity as importance. High emotion equals high significance, which means the people who put us through the most, the highest highs and the lowest lows, leave the deepest marks. Not because they deserve to, because that is how the filing system works. The mechanism that makes gambling addictive. In the 1950s, behavioral psychologist B.F. Skinner discovered something that would go on to explain an enormous amount of human suffering. When rewards are unpredictable, when you cannot tell when the good thing is coming, only that it sometimes does, the psychological pull toward the source of that reward becomes far more powerful than when rewards are consistent. A rat that receives a food pellet every time it presses a lever will press steadily. A rat that receives a pellet sometimes, randomly, unpredictably, will press obsessively, desperately, long after the pellets stop coming. Now replace the lever with a person. A relationship where warmth and affection are consistent does not create obsession. What creates obsession is inconsistency. Someone who is wonderful sometimes and cold others, who pulls you close and then pushes you away, who gives you just enough to stay and never enough to feel secure. Your nervous system cannot resist this. It was not built to. The uncertainty hijacks your brain's reward circuitry, flooding it with dopamine, not when you receive the good thing, but in anticipation of potentially receiving it. The chase becomes the addiction. This is why the most difficult relationships to leave are never the consistently terrible ones. It is the hot and cold ones, the ones where you never knew which version of them was coming, the ones where the good moments were so good that they seemed to justify the bad ones until they didn't. And even after they are gone, long after, the circuitry keeps firing, still anticipating a reward that is no longer coming. That is what missing them feels like from the inside. Not love exactly, withdrawal. What you are actually missing. But there is something else operating beneath even that. Something the neuroscience does not fully capture. Often when we miss someone who was bad for us, we are not missing who they actually were. We are missing who we were when we were with them. Or more precisely, who we believed we could become. Relationships give us a version of ourselves to inhabit. And sometimes, even in relationships that hurt us, there are parts of who we became in that context that we genuinely valued, a version of ourselves that felt more alive, more seen, more capable of feeling something. When the relationship ends, we do not just lose the person, we lose that version of ourselves too. And grief is rarely clean enough to separate these two losses. We mourn them both at once, tangled together, and call all of it missing them. When some of what we are actually grieving is a self that no longer has anywhere to live. Psychologist John Bowlby, whose decades of attachment research became foundational in developmental psychology, found that we are drawn with uncanny consistency to emotional dynamics that mirror the ones we first learned in childhood. If the love you learned early was inconsistent, if safety came with conditions, if affection arrived and disappeared without warning, then inconsistent love will feel familiar to you as an adult. And familiar to the nervous system registers as safe, even when it is not, even when everything else in you knows it is not. You are not missing the harm, you are missing the familiarity. And those two things, woven together long enough, become almost indistinguishable from each other. How to actually move through it. Understanding the mechanism does not make the missing disappear, but it changes what it means. And changing what it means is not a small thing. The first shift is separating the feeling from the conclusion. Missing someone is not evidence that you should go back. It is not evidence that they were right for you, or that the relationship was good, or that leaving was a mistake. It is evidence that your nervous system is running a program that was installed long before you had any say in the matter, and that programs of that depth take time, more time than we want, to rewrite. The second is grieving what was actually lost, not the idealized version, not the person you hoped they would become. The real losses, the version of yourself that existed in that relationship, the future you had already started imagining, the hope itself. Grief that is specific moves. Grief that is diffuse just circles. The third and the hardest is developing tolerance for a kind of love that does not feel like intensity. Relationships that are safe, consistent, and genuinely kind can feel almost boring to a nervous system calibrated for chaos. Not because they are lesser, because they are different. And learning to experience that difference as safety rather than absence, to feel the stillness and not reach for the storm, is some of the most difficult and most necessary work a person can do. Researcher Robert Weiss, who spent decades studying loneliness and attachment, found that what people most consistently misidentify in themselves is not the absence of love, but the absence of the particular nervous system activation they have come to associate with it. We mistake the activation for the love, and when the activation is gone, we conclude the love is gone too. Even when something quieter and more durable has taken its place. The quiet truth at the end. The missing does not mean you were wrong to leave. It means you were human enough to love someone, complicated enough to be affected, alive enough to feel the shape of their absence. The brain does not file people by whether they were good for you. It files them by how intensely they made you feel. And intensity, the kind that comes from uncertainty, from longing, from the electric unpredictability of someone who keeps you always slightly off balance, is one of the most powerful experiences a human nervous system can have. That is not a character flaw. That is just how the system works. The work is not to stop missing them. The work is to stop mistaking the missing for a verdict on your judgment, on your worth, on whether you are someone who deserves something steadier. You are. The nervous system just needs time to believe it. We will see you in the next one.